This is the third Tuesday of the month Waupaca City Council meeting.
It's our regular scheduled City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. I call this meeting to order, and as always, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll ask Sandy to read the clerk's open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
And also take roll call for us, Sandy.
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan.
Here.
Alan Keeland.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Chuck Whitman.
Here.
And Mary Fair.
Here.
And Eric Olson. 9 present. We have a quorum.
Next up is the consent agenda. These are items that we vote on with one motion, as long as everybody's okay with leaving all of those items on the consent agenda. This is the opportunity for council members or staff members to move any item that's on the consent agenda over to the regular agenda, where then we would vote on those on an individual basis. Hearing none, then we would need a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Hackett, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Under regular agenda, Sandy is telling me that there were no additional handouts that needed to be put on the regular agenda. So again, unless council would like to see something changed there, we would be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Fair, second by Chestnut, that we approve the regular agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Non-agenda items and announcements. A couple of announcements real quick. Mary Fair, you handed out something to each one of the council members, and that is what basically?
It's a save the date for Arts on the Square and Artisipation Week. Arts on the Square is August 19th. And the week preceding it is called Artisipation Week, with activities going on pretty much every day and evening of that week. So just a reminder for all of us.
Great. Thanks, Mary. And then Peg, you also brought something tonight.
I did. I brought treats.
So help yourself if you, I guess they're left over from an event that you had today.
We had the event over the weekend, and they were left over. So please eat up.
Right.
Sandwiches, and there's some.
Thanks, Peg. We have a presentation of a plaque for Tina Dennis, who works in the clerk's office. She's 25 years of service to the city. I know Tina's not here tonight, but we'll make sure that she gets that plaque. It looks very nice. And then we also have a certificate and a gift card to Roger Hansen. He already received his plaque at 25 years, so he gets a 30-year certificate and then also a gift certificate from the city for his 30 years of service. So if you see either one of them, thank them for their many years of service. And Justin, I'm sure you'll get that to Roger for us. And then annually we have someone from the Police and Fire Commission that comes in and tells us a little bit about what's been going on in the police department, and we call it the annual report, and I see Commissioner Jim Schultz is here tonight. So Jim, grab the podium and tell us a little bit about what happened in the past year.
Sir, yes, sir. Thank you. Mayor Smith, thank you so much. Members of the council, fellow Waupaca residents, esteemed members of the media. Though the city of Waupaca's population is estimated now just over 6,000, many of our citizens actually live outside the city limits and surrounding townships. The Waupaca area provides services for actually over 30,000 people within a 15-mile radius of the city, which is a little over 8 square miles that is covered. Changes to the police department since our last report are significant, as I'm sure you know. Chief Tim Goke retired last year after 13 years with the department. Before he left, he made it easy for the police commission to transition into first an acting chief and then ultimately our new chief of police, Brian Hozell. And the commission is genuinely grateful for Tim's help and guidance during this important time. We owe him a great debt of gratitude. Now to business. You have a packet there provided by Chief Hozell, and I'm not going to go through it item by item. I am not a vindictive man. Statistics off the top show that crime numbers are actually fairly constant in our community. The total number of calls responded to is down slightly this past year, but the number of UCR calls, serious crimes, is actually up slightly. Now, if you want to become familiar with the exact numbers, if you will address yourself to Table 5, 6, 7, and 8, you will see them labeled violent crimes, property crimes, society crimes, and all other crimes. Tables 9 and 10 depict traffic enforcement activity. Now, while the number of calls responded to is actually down slightly in 2016, overall, the number of calls for police assistance remained fairly constant over, say, the last 5 years. There has not been a huge change in the number of crimes. However, the type and severity of crimes changes with the times. There's always been some fluctuation in the number of crimes reported to police. Recently, drug-related crimes, specifically opioids, a spillover from larger metropolitan areas, have become more common and more serious in our community. Waupaca Police Department is utilizing the very latest training, equipment, and prevention techniques to combat drug crimes in our area. But I'm sure you understand that is not an easy fight. Now, let's talk about money. The 2016 budget for the Waupaca Police Department is just over $1.5 million. The budget is broken down into 7 different areas. They are administration, patrol, clerical, drug enforcement, school liaison and school patrol, and parking enforcement. Table 1 will show you the actual budget for specific programs for the year 2016. During the year, it appeared that the department came in over budget, even though it was less than 0.5%. However, when revenue from the OWI grant, the drug grant, and federal reimbursement dollars for vests is included in our income, this was income that was not budgeted. The final numbers show that the department actually did finish the year $3,700 under budget. Now, I should point out that the grant money for OWI enforcement, drug enforcement, and the federal money for patrol vests, we're talking about $7,000 here, was raised through grant writing by the department and did not come from the city budget. And I would commend the department on its creativity and fiscal responsibility for finding us that money. But what I really want to report to you tonight is that the Waupaca Police Department is in a very good place right now. The transition of 22-year veteran Detective Sergeant Brian Hozell to Chief of Police, John Helgeson from Patrol Sergeant to Detective Sergeant, Brent Krieger from Patrol Officer to Patrol Sergeant, show that our police department continues to move in the right direction, the direction our community wants it to move. The department strives every day to be a constructive, contributing, positive entity in our community. Officer Benshaw keeps our Facebook presence up to date. Social media is a way to both gather and disseminate information. The department asked for and received generous community help in raising money to buy the latest safety equipment for our officers. Officer Grasifa has given educational talks to Ministry Healthcare, Waupaca Parks and Rec, the library, Gusmer Enterprises. Officer Zuby joined members from the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Department, and Gold Cross Ambulance at St. Mark's Church to help the community become familiar with emergency services and the people who provide them. Our department, and the police commission, I might add, adopted a family last Christmas, and I would point out we did that with help from Councilmember Lori Chestnut. Thank you. Together we raised over $400 for toys and gifts for our adopted family. Officers Redens and Hahn donated clothes, toys, and blankets for a local family of 5. Gas cards were given to them so they could take their kids to doctor's appointments. 8 of our officers and our administrative assistant, Jerry Allen, took part in Shop with a Cop, which is actually a county-wide program where, using donations, our officers take kids shopping at Fleet Farm during the holidays so they can buy gifts for their families. Afterwards, they get together for a big wrapping party at the rec center. They have pizza, a feast provided by Little Caesars. You probably read in the paper that Officer Nate Nelson went above and beyond the call of duty when he coordinated a dream-come-true autographed football jersey for a local kid. And more recently, one of our officers helped deliver a baby at South Park. Our police department is a good fit for our community right now, and that has been and remains among our primary goals. Now, if you have questions, I will try to answer them or direct them to Chief Hozell. I thank you so much for your attention and this opportunity.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody have any questions or comments for Jim or the chief?
Nice job. Well done.
Appreciate you taking your time, Jim, to come in and get us up to date. It's always good to hear that. Usually we have to hear it from the chief, but it's nice to hear it from the commissioners too. Thanks a lot. Moving on then, next on our agenda is a proclamation for the Arts Appreciation Month. And I know, Marcy, you're here tonight. Is there anything you want to say, Marcy, or did you?
Sure. Since you asked, that's right. I'm Marcy Reynolds. I'm the president of Waupaca Community Arts Board. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us, and thanks for once again supporting the arts. We do receive some funding from the hotel motel tax. Things have changed with the constrictions on that money, but we still were able to write a grant and get some support that way. We've got great community support for our arts festival. We've become much more sustainable and have a money-making scheme that we have in place that enables us to expand the festival to a full week without really raising our budget. So we're really proud of that. I think that, Mary, you passed out these, right? And did you pass out the poetry thing? Oh.
Not yet.
Okay. Do you have it?
No.
Okay. We have 2 community projects this year. We always do a community-wide art project. And this one community art project was coordinated by Anita Olson, who's here. And she's one of our great board members, and Mary Fair, who's one of our board members. We're going to try to write the longest poem ever. And so all of the retailers are participating. So what you can do is go into any downtown store, really, right? Yes. Basically, or the chamber, and or the library, and pick up a little form. There's 3 stanzas that some anonymous poets have written, and you just add your stanza. It can be anything about Waupaca. It can really be anything. And then they're going to collate this all and create this really long poem. And it will go on a big long scroll that will be attached to a crank, so it'll be cranked out. So it's going to be on like that fabric that they make banners out of, so the scroll will probably be fairly large and substantial looking, and we'll be reading the poem at Arts on the Square. So we've got some people making it's called a cranky, and that's one of our community projects. So we've been working on that for about 6 weeks. We've gotten lots of entries so far. Angie did a great article in the paper, and there's still time to enter, so we know you all love the arts and would like to write a couple stanzas, we'd love to have people enter this so that it can be just something that we can all participate in. And then the second project, Anita Olson has also worked on, and it's a paper making project, and we have an artist coming, and they're going to be making pulp paper in the back parking lot on Friday and on Saturday. It's going to be a process where you put a lot of things into this big vat. It'll be fabric, it might be noxious weeds. Some people are going to take out their angst about all of the invasive plants and bring down a bunch of, buckthorn or whatever, and it's going to all go into this big stew that will be ground up mechanically, but it's going to be bicycle powered. So it'll be kind of a fun way to just make paper with our people power. And on Saturday, the pulp will be poured out onto screens and people can take home examples of homemade paper. So the other thing I wanted to mention is just the fact that the festival has grown to a full week. There are literally 2 to 5 things on every day, Monday through culminating with the dance on Friday. The library actually has 3 separate events that they've joined with us on. We're really excited about all this joining in. Lots of different venues, downtown businesses, different organizations are joining in to make this really a community festival. So again, we're really excited just to have all of this community input and to celebrate the arts and see so many people enjoy it. So with that, Mayor Smith.
Thanks, Marcy. I appreciate that. We do have a proclamation that I would like to read for Arts Appreciation Month, and I will read that now. Whereas the Waupaca community has a long history of volunteers coming together to promote the arts and arts appreciation, from a few dedicated people working to provide artistic exposure to the community, our arts community has grown to include a very sizable artist community and many different art organizations and art-related businesses of all kind. Whereas the arts not only provide entertainment, self-expression, and community building, but also create environments that promote innovation, curiosity, ingenuity, exposure to many different kinds of artistic expression, stimulate the development of creative solutions to both new and old challenges, and thinking outside the box mentality that is so vitally needed in today's world. Whereas the many different arts organizations and art-related businesses in our area enhance our economy, bring in many tourist dollars, and make our community a more vital, robust, and dynamic place to live and visit. Our active arts community is a wonderful human complement to the natural beauty for which we have long been known. Whereas it is more than appropriate to honor and celebrate our dynamic and thriving artistic community with the month of August as Arts Appreciation Month. Now, therefore I, Brian Smith, Mayor of the City of Waupaca, do hereby proclaim the month of August as Arts Appreciation Month, launching yet another entire year of arts endeavors by our creative community. In testimony whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed the Great Seal of the City of Waupaca, the great state of Wisconsin, this 18th day of July, 2017. There we go.
Thank you so much.
All right, so good luck to the Arts on the Square. What number is this again? I can't remember. What?
11.
The 11th year. Awesome. Looking forward to it. All right. Next on our agenda is public input. This is for anything that's not on our agenda tonight. If there's anybody that'd like to speak to the City Council or staff or both on an item that's a non-agenda item, please step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and limit your discussion to 3 minutes or less. Anybody that would like to speak on a go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Want to just go on record for our gratitude about 112 North Main and the effort the mayor and the city of Waupaca has done to help move forward a very exciting opportunity for not only the city of Waupaca, but for for us, and we're grateful. And 2 months ago, of course, the mayor invoked the DRT team, and toward that end to try and figure this out, which we're also grateful for. So moving forward, we're just very interested in some timelines because of our business issues and personal finance issues that we're trying to make some decisions about. And as anybody can understand, when you're trying to make money, you have to have knowns about what you can or cannot do and time frames. And and Mr. Mayor, I think you've already made it known that you're doing everything you can to expedite the process to get this figured out in a sooner than later time frame, and we're certainly appreciative of that. And so to that end, and Mr. Veliker, as far as your efforts in heading up the DRT, to maybe tighten up the updates as far as what we're looking at to see what code issues or possibilities could be, so that when we involve an architect, we have some sort of a time frame, not only, but also sort of an architecture of what we can or cannot do in terms of what the city is considering at this point. So that's all I really wanted to say. And again, thank you all for your efforts, and appreciate just what you do for us. We're very excited to be here. So thank you.
Awesome. And Rick, just give your name again.
Yes, Rick Walter, representing 112 North Main Street, downtown Waupaca.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else that would like to give some public input?
Peg Burrington, Library Director, also taxpayer, lives at 614 South Main Street. I'd like to bring to the council's attention the sick leave payout that is part of our employee handbook and benefits. I was astounded when we had a public works director who had a payout of over $70,000 as he left the city. And I was upset at that time, but I didn't feel it was my place to bring that forward. However, new developments in the library, we have our assistant director who's leaving the library. He will have worked 16 years, which is the minimum number to get the 100% of the payout for sick leave. And we're looking at about $30,000 from our budget that we have to find to fund the sick leave payout. Now, as a taxpayer, I'm upset about the fact that when somebody leaves the city, and there is incentive to leave because after 16 years you win the lottery, but also that is funded by the taxpayers. This is something that the taxpayers ultimately pay for, and they lose service when the library has to basically step back from hiring process and figure out how to fund the sick leave payout in order to move forward and hire another assistant director. I know this isn't a popular subject I'm sure that I'm going to be in trouble with a lot of employees of the city. I'm an employee of the city. And while I would be somebody who would benefit from this policy, I think the policy is bad policy. I think it hurts the taxpayers. I think ultimately it hurts the departments. And I'm not sure that it's fair that somebody who's worked for the city expects to win the lottery when they leave. It's just not reasonable. In the public sector, you might get a severance pay if you're laid off or if you're retiring and taking a package. But here at the city, if you worked 16 years, you can go on to your next career and have that money to pay for your new house or your new car or what it is that you're looking for. So I really want the council to consider the sick leave payout and consider the taxpayers' opinion of what that actually is and what it means. And I know it's unpopular with my fellow workers because they stand to benefit from this policy. But I also think there's another way to pay out sick leave without crippling a department when somebody leaves. And I think we need to look seriously at that policy, and I would appreciate your help in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peg. Peg did stop in the mayor's office this afternoon and told me that she was going to speak on this tonight. And as always, when we have a request, whether it's from a council member, a citizen at large, or a staff member, I take it seriously. And I would like to see City Council take a look at this and see what the concerns are and see if there's anything that we can do to improve on that, whether we decide to do that or not. But I think we have a request from a staff member who also is a taxpayer of the city that we take a look at it. So I request that this be put on one of our future city council meetings, whether it's the August 1st or the August 15th meeting. Henry, whichever you think might be a little lighter load for us is fine with me. But thank you. All right, any other public input? Let's move on then to department announcements and reports, and we are going to start with Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My report starts on page 4, and it's short and sweet. I'm working on the budget, but I also did meet with the R.W. Baird representatives, the city's financial advisors, to review possible TIF district options for refinancing debt. As part of the budget process, we did have it that we would just review the TIF districts. There was a review with the Joint Review Board that was required per law. But that's was the first step, and I think we need to look at the outstanding debt and where some recommendations from staff are for going forward with all the TIF districts. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Thank you, Kathy. Peg, you're up next.
Thank you, Paul Mayo. So a lot of exciting things are happening in the library. We have the culmination of our RFID project, which is the tagging project we've been working on for 3 years. Our security gates have arrived, and they're glorious looking, and they actually light up if something's wrong with the things that you're either carrying in or out. So we haven't completely turned those on yet because we have a lot of work to do yet in that. Our renovations are just about complete. We have a couple of pieces of furniture that are going to be put in place. Our self-check machines have been ordered. 3 of them will be arriving before the 1st of August and hopefully be in place within a month of that. And I just want you to recall that this is a Library Foundation funded project, and it's very exciting to see all of the changes. We appreciate the tax money that went for the new carpet and the new paint. And people who walk into our building ask us, "Did you just build this place?" The visitors. So it's really gratifying to see. We have some exciting things happening in August. We have Elizabeth Berg, which is a nationally recognized author, coming to our library on the 24th. It's a Thursday at noon, and she is coming free of charge. She heard about Waupaca and great things that we do with authors, and her agent contacted us, so that's pretty exciting. Also, we're working on a teen author, Asia Mayrock, and she's written a book called Survival Guide to Bullying. And she herself was bullied as a child. She came out of it strong, and she talks to students about not only being bullied, but bullying others. So she really is an inspiration, and this is a collaboration between the Waupaca Way initiative at the schools. Rotary Foundation is helping us with that, and then the Library Foundation as well. So I'm looking forward to that visit. We're participating in the summer block party next week. Should be a great time. And we have our reading dogs, and once again, at Arts on the Fair, as Marcy said, we have programs that can be found on our website. So take a look and see what's going on at the library. Thanks.
Thank you, Peg. Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. My report was sent under a separate cover last week, Friday. Just 2 things I wanted to just remind everybody that next week, Friday, is the first annual summer block party. Again, it's kind of a joint event that we're merging a couple of the original Downtown on Main events into one event next Friday, July 28th in Rotary Riverview Park. That will take place from 12 till 11:30 at night. It will include free music throughout the entire day presented by 96.3. There'll be a free summer picnic that'll be available. There'll be a craft beer walk that'll be taking place on Main Street. And there'll be, as Peg mentioned, a kind of a kids fun zone that'll be part of the event as well. So I want to thank Henry, the Chamber, Aaron's department, the library, and everyone else that's pulling their efforts together to put this event on. We hopefully it's going to be a great success and great weather. Also, to Justin and his team for installing Sputter Open again for me this year on Cooper Street. So looking forward to that. And then I just, it is in my report, but if Mr. Wolter is still here, just for the council's benefit, we did have a great discussion at the Planning Commission meeting last week regarding the live work in the downtown area. And the tentative or the timeline that we have in place right now is to have a draft ordinance back to the Planning Commission by September, with hopefully a final adoption sometime in October with the council. That will require a public hearing, so we are going to be seeking input at that time as well. So that is the tentative timeline that we're at right now, which we hope to be wrapped up with that right around the October time period. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Brennan. Public Works, Justin.
Thank you, Mayor. My report can be seen on page 30 and 31 of the packet. And as usual, starting with the wastewater side, our cathodic protection project will be starting very shortly. Our first crew is scheduled in on July 24th, which is next Monday, to start the work. While that's going on, for about 2 weeks, we're going to have our backup pump generator installed at Riverside Park, which will be a little noisy. We sent out some letters to the nearby neighbors, so to excuse our noise, but hopefully it'll go by without too much of a hitch. And then shortly in thereafter, early August, we'll have the Impress current workers there to finish up Kiwanis and also Industrial Park. The big thing, I guess, within the department on the utility side is our SCADA system. We're still having some issues with our communications, having failures, having guys called in when they're off or after hours. We've been working on it. We've tried a number of things, like I've mentioned before, switching out some equipment, new antenna, new wiring. Just today we brought in a radio guy to help us retune our radios, and we're going to see, and crossing our fingers, that that'll improve. Let you know in a few weeks if things have gotten better or not. I also try to reach out to a number of facilities in the area, county facilities, King Home, EMS, that sort of thing, to see if they've made any changes, and nothing's really come up. So we're hoping with a little more fine-tuning things will turn around. Street side, I'd just like to mention Lake Street project is slated to start August 21st, again after the triathlon, and that will help us wait, I guess, for the DNR money for the lead service line. We're expecting that announcement to be early August, so once we see if we're on the list and how much we'll get, we'll move forward with that contract if we can, and try to get both of those going at the same time. We had a big storm earlier this month, and there was quite a bit of cleanup. We heard some good response, a lot of positive feedback. Well, thank you for all that. And we finally got all that stuff cleaned up and squared away, and now it's basically back in the office with myself and Kathy just putting the numbers together for the emergency process. As you might have noticed, pavement markings were freshened up downtown, including Union Street, where the back-end parking is gone for good, so it's back to front end. First couple days, there was a few people that were still a little confused, but it seems to be better now. Fulton Street, we had that big gas main project with We Energies. That is nearing completion. I had several comments on that because the grass got a little long. We met with We Energies, Roger Hansen and myself. We walked the whole project. We have a punch list together, but that should be wrapping up. We think that the crew is doing a very good job within the last few weeks of coming back and restoring what they should and how they should. Water side, the meters are still kind of a big deal, doing a lot of change outs. And with our usage being down, I did a review on basically our usage. The water guys kind of looked closer at the meters, and we found a number of things that accounted for lower loss. A bunch of minor things, but didn't quite add up to what we were looking for. In general, we just think that water usage is down. People are conserving. One of the little tidbits we found was some of our meters we found were reading in cubic feet and not in gallons. And what that means is there's about 7.5 gallons per cubic foot. So if you had one of those meters, you were basically getting 6.5 feet or 6.5 gallons for free. So we've found a few of those that we've made corrections on. We're still waiting on the King water study, but once that is complete, we're going to request a meeting just to kind of reach closure on that project. And the trailer park has new owners, and we met with them, Brennan, Kane, and myself, and I guess on the water side is a big thumbs up is bringing them into compliance as far as their meter situation goes. As following the PSC rules, it's kind of like, should be treated as an apartment complex. We should have a master meter there, and we should just be billing one company. So that's what we're going to be switching to. Then finally, a few minor things on the facility side. All the guys renewed their forklift certification, conducted annual security alarm test here in City Hall. The company that helps us with that has recommended some upgrades. So we have, I guess, several options, and we're reviewing those, and probably will bring something forward in the future depending on the cost and what we determine. Sprinklers been inspected, and our annual fire extinguishers have been inspected as well. That's it.
Thanks, Justin. Aaron, Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. My report can be found on page 21 in your packet. I want to touch on a few things highlighted in some of my report and Sarah's from the Senior Center. Number one, June Swan Park usage. I just wanted to highlight the amount of games that get played out there. Credit to our maintenance crews. Credit to the associations that help us make these things possible. 325 games in the month of June. That's about 81 games per field. So when you think about it, that's a lot of games. It's a lot of wear and tear on those fields. Our maintenance crews do a very good job of keeping everything to a high standard each and every night. Also, really, when we talk about that and all the tournaments played out there, we'd love to see events out there. June is packed, as we all know. July, we get a little slower, and some of that is just because you have to have people that are different people to run different tournaments on different weekends, so it's not the same people out there given 60-hour weekends each weekend in the summer. I would love to see eventually Swan Park be used every single weekend for a tournament or an event of some sort. It's too nice of a facility not to. Basically from June 1 to September 1, and we're inching closer to that. We have a new U17 tournament. That's this coming Saturday. That's a girls softball tournament. Dean Sandrol is helping run that, or is running that. We also have a new men's softball tournament that will be August 26th. So we're starting to fill some of those open dates, and we hope to continue to do that. Also in the month of June, we had 38 park shelter reservations. Most of our shelters, as you can imagine, are reserved on Saturdays and Sundays. So those are basically all booked throughout the whole summer. Goose Roundup, I'm sure you've seen an article in the paper by now. Probably saw it in my report. Just wanted to give a quick explanation. The geese were not around when we thought they would be, in the spots we thought they would be. So rather than having, working with USDA and paying the $2,000 to $3,000 to have them come and not be successful, we decided to push it off. We were kind of scheduled at the end of the year that you could do it. The geese kind of had an early spring, and we're done molting about that week that we had it scheduled. So now hopefully, I've already seen them back. So I was going to say hopefully we don't have the issue, but they're already starting to come back. We anticipate that we will have the issue again next spring, and we'll go through this process. We'll see if we can work with the USDA on getting scheduled earlier. So if we do have this happen again, we give ourselves a couple weeks for some rescheduled dates. We want to thank the people that supported it. We had 16 landowners give permission. We had $1,700 raised from individuals and a group. We gave those individuals the opportunity to either have a refund for that donation or put it towards next year. So far, all the responses back was that they're going to keep it in the fund for next year. We did have a senior center rummage sale that raised over $1,400, so credit to Sarah and her crew for the extra work on that. Also in the senior center, Natalie Pimpo, who is one of our activity instructors, did give her notice that she will be moving, and that is as of August 11th. So we've had a little bit of turnover in the senior center. See what we can do to correct that in the future, just to give us some consistency. School District Finance Committee meeting, that's coming up on Monday. I'll be giving a presentation very similar to the one that you guys have seen here at Council. The notice of, or the thing that will be added to it will be the numbers inside the school district, but outside of our partnering areas would be the number of households and the population. And I want to thank Brennan's department and Rhonda specifically for working her magic on that GIS thing to come up with those numbers. So that was very helpful. It's going to be helpful information to have for that presentation. August 11th, movie in the park is set, Lego Batman, and that's at South Park. We'll start around 8:30. Rotary Riverview Park Planning Committee meeting, that's going to be about a 6 to 8 month process, and we're looking at August 10th as the first date for that at 5:30. Thank you, Peg, for the space in the library for that meeting. And then Friends of Waupaca Parks, we're kind of starting a revitalization of the Friends of Waupaca Parks. We've got some new board members on, and we're going to be having our first meeting in quite some time in August as well. We have our annual fundraiser, Fall-O-Rama, coming up on September, I believe it's 16th, whatever that Saturday is, this year. So we're looking forward to that. Other than that, I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Thank you. Chief Ozell.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Our Police Commission met its regular meeting in July on July 11th. I shared with them our most recent phone bill that we got. Josh Warner did a great job with working with AT&T. Last September, because of the rates, we had a bill of like $1,200, and our rates fluctuated. And working with the commission, we found that we were getting billed on those high rates, and actually our phone bill dropped down to $19.94 for Josh working on it. So it really helps out with our budget as to where we go through the year. I also provided the commission with a COPS grant that was recently written and was submitted last week. It was for $125,000 of federal grant money for a new officer in a department, and what that officer would be for would be to a full-time drug officer. It's something that's drastically that's needed. When I reported to the commission last week, we were at 14 overdoses this year so far in the city of Waupaca. Well, now that has gone up to 15. So that kind of brings us into the next part of carrying the Narcan in the squads. That's something that what we're going to do is have them in the squads for if we go out on calls, or for officers that we can deploy that. Most recently, I think it was last night, there was a Menasha police officer who got exposed to some fentanyl and recognized the danger that he was in, and he was not too far from the Winnebago County Jail, and he pulled in there, and they actually gave him some Narcan and brought him back from what he was going through. So it's something that's going to be important that that we get with the officers, that they are carrying that not just for the people in the community if there is an overdose, but also for themselves. So that's something that we're going to be doing in the middle of August. We're going to have some formal training, and then the officers will have that with them. The other thing I guess that the police department did that was new this year, we were contacted by Pick and Save for Stuff the Squad event, and what the officers did is they brought a squad car up. Officer Matt Batt and Brett Rodens brought a squad up to Pick and Save, and they had that out there, and they met with people that were going in and out of the stores, and they actually collected 169 bags of food that they delivered to our local food pantry. So I guess when you look at the public as to the support that we have in our community is really strong, and I really appreciate the people that donated and the officers that were involved, and that they were able to get that to the food pantry. And then most recently on June 5th, one of our officers, Diana Fladuff, I'm sure you saw in the paper, she helped deliver a baby boy down by the old ice house off of Junction Street, down by Mirror Lake. So I was really proud of her. She did an excellent job, really remained her composure. I was listening to it on the radio, and I couldn't believe how calm she was when she was talking. It didn't seem like she was involved, but she said her heart was racing, and her mother instincts and her skills and everything kicked in. And then lastly, Lieutenant Johnson actually celebrated his 28th year with the police department, and that was back on July 5th. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but 28 years that he's been with our department, so I'd just like to congratulate him on that.
Absolutely.
So everything else that was in there was informational.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Chief. Josh, IT.
As Chief Hozell talked about, we got the AT&T issue taken care of and a $3,100 credit on that. On the community media side of things, we're taping our 4th episode of Waupaca Local Live, our local music program, and that's this Thursday night. We have a metal band coming in this month of the Earth. On the IT side of things, just working on regular maintenance, doing firmware upgrades on all of our network devices, just some kind of mid-year maintenance items, make sure everything's up to date and in good order. Our onboarding software is pretty much ready to go. I think there's just a few little tweaks that need to get done. I think we'll learn a few things on that as we start using it, but otherwise it's ready for all departments. Made it through Park and Rec for their busy summer hiring season and figured out a lot with that as well. On the Waupaca Online side of things, we submitted our grant application for the broadband expansion project. We were one of over 53 applications received, all vying for $1.4 million. We'll see how that turns out. I've attended a handful of town meetings in regards to the upgrade project to answer questions and talk about some different things. Of our 2 towers that collapsed in the storm, the second one just got word today that that's rebuilt, and the guys should be out there tomorrow to get our equipment down there and get service restored to that area. And with that, I've been working with the insurance company, getting documentation and invoices and all that sort of information in, and it looked like an email came through today that so far things are looking good on that claim. That's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you, Josh. Henry.
Thanks, Mayor. My report begins on page 35. Brennan hit on a couple things I was going to comment about. Thanks, Brennan. But one he didn't mention was the arts and culture planning effort. The last meeting was on July 11th. It's really great to see the different groups coalescing around some common goals and themes. I think we're on target to put together a draft plan in the October timeframe, and the City Council will get a chance to look at that and review it and hopefully support some of the recommendations that are in that. And then really excited about the effort underway to get our first responders group viable again and up and running. It's very encouraging. I attended a meeting in early July, and there's actually a core of people, about a half a dozen, that are already certified. And we're just trying to get them organized. I want to thank Gold Cross for providing some leadership on that and some assistance in trying to understand how to do that. It's a whole different world for me. But I think they're eager to get going and get a viable unit going. Of course, funding is likely going to be an issue. You might hear about that in the budget process coming forward. And then finally, Kathy mentioned a TIF review. I think we're looking at actually doing that as a committee of the whole following the Tuesday, August 1 meeting. We'd like to get through the council meeting and then have a period of time where you can just focus on Kathy's presentation and have a nice discussion about where we're at with the TIF, because there's some opportunities to close some of those out in the near future, and just need to have you informed and have a nice discussion about that. So that will kind of kick off our 2018 budget process. I think that's it, Mayor. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Henry. I wanted to just make one announcement. I wanted to congratulate actually Jack Tomlinson. His son was the umpire, the home plate umpire for the Futures. Is that right? Yeah. For the Futures game, which was at the right before the.
It was the Sunday of All-Star Week. The Futures game was Sunday night, and the Home Run Derby was Monday night. He was on the field for that as well, down the left field line. And then he had the night off for the Major League All-Star game. You could just spectate with the rest of us.
Nice.
That's awesome.
That was really cool. And he was actually the crew chief.
He was the crew chief for that umpiring crew for the All-Star Futures game, yes.
Yeah, and his claim to fame, of course, he got on Facebook because he took a foul tip and it took his mask right off, and he had to act tough like it didn't hit him or anything. But it was really neat. So congratulations, Jack. Yep. All right, let's move on then, unless the council members, anything else informational? Let's go on to unfinished business. This is a reconsideration of the development agreement terms between the city of Waupaca and Doc Addy's. And Brennan, I'm going to have you set this up for us.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This too was sent under separate cover last week Friday and uploaded to the city website, so it's not part of the exact packet, but hopefully everyone was able to find it. My memo is attached, and I'm not going to go through the whole memo part of it, because I think we've had enough, conversations regarding, the process at the city and Mr. Jan Bach and Mr. Robert Forsyth have gone through with us to at least get us to the point here. The critical date that we're really discussing this evening is the developers agreement that the City Council approved on February 22nd of 2017, earlier this year. Over the last couple months, Mr. Bach and Mr. Forsyth have been seeking financial funding through different lending sources for the project. And if everyone remembers, that agreement on February 22nd required them to put up a letter of credit as part of the developers agreement in the amount of the grant that the city received from WEDC. Over the last couple months, they've had some challenges and have in getting this funding and have approached the city on a multitude of occasions, meeting with Henry, the mayor, myself, Mr. Mayo, Kathy, regarding options to consider for moving this project forward and considerations. So if you look underneath the request by Doc Addy's this evening, they are seeking about three or four different changes to the original developers agreement from February 22nd. The first one is they would like to eliminate the letter of credit and go to a personal guarantee. If the council remembers, this was discussed extensively throughout the process. The letter of credit is a secured guarantee that in the event that the project would fail, that we have the opportunity to secure that money and pay or reimburse WDC back the monies that were granted to the city. They would like to eliminate that requirement and go to more of a personal guarantee. We did have an independent review done by Von Briesen and Associates, and at this time, the personal guarantee may work. However, there's no confirmation that within 5 years there's enough liquid assets to guarantee the reimbursement of those grant dollars. As part of that, they would also like to eliminate reimbursing WEDC altogether. Remember, the original grant required that if the project were to close doors or fail to move forward or maintain operations for 5 years, we as a city, being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, would actually reimburse the WEDC back those dollars that were granted to us. The second one is really just a change in scope of the project. When I originally wrote the grant request, it was for a brewery, distillery, winery. There was also conversations and discussions about the renovation of the second floor and the elevator. Parts of that project are not moving forward at this time. This project has been broken up into 2 phases. So there's really just change of scope and language that needs to be done. That's more at the WEDC level, but it is a consideration. The main concern here that they're looking at is, and will be a discussion that I've had briefly with the state, is the scope does need to be defined a bit. They are seeking a little bit more flexibility by changing it to and/or. In the event, for instance, the brewery were to close, they still would have the winery or brew pub potential for that project. And then there's also some additional dates that need to be changed. If you look at the original agreement, we're past when the letter of credit was due. We're past when construction was supposed to start, so we do need to change some of those dates. And then the option, or the other consideration that they would like, as I kind of mentioned, was not repaying back the grant dollars that were granted to WEDC. And then underneath options to consider, I've laid out 3 options for common council to consider this evening. And with that, I will open it up to any questions or that the mayor.
Has everybody seen the options, the audience and staff?
Would you like me to read them?
I think maybe from what you perceive as the options that we should consider tonight,
The options I put in forth to the Common Council to consider this evening, or option one would be the Common Council can decide to uphold the original February 22nd, 2017 approval of the developers agreement between Doc Addies and the City of Waupaca with no changes. Option number two would be they could accept any and/or all changes requested by the applicant and direct staff to finalize a new developers agreement between Doc Addies and the City of Waupaca. Or number three, the Common Council may decide to dissolve the agreement between Doc Addies and the City of Waupaca, and at that time, the city would return the grant dollars back to WEDC.
Okay. And thank you, Brennan. I know we have representatives, including Jan and Robert, who are the two individuals that are asking for this request. And I see their attorney is here and also their contractor is also here, Tom. Okay, so you've listened to what Brennan has said, and would you like to make some comments at this time before we open it for discussion on the council level?
Yes.
Okay. Jan, you just need to give your name for the record, please.
My name is Jan Bax, and I'd like to thank Mayor Smith and the council for letting me speak tonight. And first of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Smith, Paul Mayo, Henry Velliker, Kathy, and Brennan for their thoughts and assistance in this project. I will try to convey my passion not only for Waupaca, but this project. Brennan was a little in error. We have never asked that the WDC return of monies be waived. I'll get to that later, but we've never asked for that to be waived. In November 2014, Robert Forsyth and I purchased the Pinkerton building on 109 North Main Street here in Waupaca. In our zeal to start the project, we removed plaster from the first floor wall. The city and the state historical societies informed us that that was frowned upon, but after several months of discussion, they allowed us to continue work on the project. We halted any project in the autumn of 2015 because we discovered the Wisconsin Economic Council had a grant for just this type of Main Street reconstruction. The grant money was up to 25% of the total cost for a maximum of $250,000, and it does not include fixtures, furniture, and equipment. It's hard reconstruction, HVAC, electrical, etc. Robert Forsyth filled out the majority of this application because it pertains to the scope and cost of the project. Mr. Kane filled out the city portion. We applied for the grant in December of 2015 and held any construction on the project until the summer of 2016, when we were awarded approximately $227,000 in grant money. It was also in 2016 when Brennan discovered the grant was a grant and not a revolving loan. That's why it's called a grant. It was then that we entered into further discussions with Dennis Wanke and Paul Mayo, who all along until this time had been very helpful in guiding us through the project and helping us find a kitchen consultant to put this project together. In August of 2016, the mayor, Paul Brennan, met with Nolita Burr from the WEDC to clarify that the money indeed is a loan and not a grant. Nolita has informed my team on many occasions, including recently, that it is absolutely a grant and not a revolving loan. From August until December of 2016, we moved slowly towards a development agreement. All that was left for approval were the exact dates of the agreement. We initially were given two options. The guarantee of the loan could either be a personal guarantee or a letter of credit from the bank, and at that time we chose a letter of credit because I did not want to submit my personal financial papers to the city, because then it becomes public knowledge. As we got into the letter of credit, we found out from the bank that although they would write it, it was just another loan that we would have to take out. In January of 2007, or in February of 2017, some of the language of the draft seemed to change. What changed was we originally had in the agreement that if the project fails within the first 5 years of business and we move the business out of state, and the WDC requests the money to be repaid. That was changed to, if we close our business within 5 years, the city would ask for the development grant back. Our intent was to match the language that the WDC has with the city. 6 weeks ago, we had a meeting with the mayor, Henry, Paul, Kathy, and Brennan, and from my team, Chuck Kaler and Tom Hoffman, our project manager. This committee agreed upon using the WDC language for repayment of the loan. The loan was repaid if we closed our doors within 5 years of the project and moved the business out of state, and the WDC requests the money back. In addition, the dates of start and finish needed to be modified, as Brennan indicated, and they were agreed upon at that meeting. Now they must be updated again. At the end of the meeting, Attorney Markowitz for the city instructed Brennan that because I was leaving the country in 4 days, that he redo the developer's agreement in 72 hours, which he said he could do, and get us all copies because I was going to be out of country. Everyone at the meeting stated, quote, "We want this project to succeed," unquote. Mayor Smith indicated that the main thing the council had to do was change the contract from line of credit to a personal guarantee. Attorney Markowitz in Milwaukee has indicated that I have sufficient funds to cover the $225,000 grant. In 5 years, Brennan said there was unknown whether or not I have that money. I guess that could be said about anybody in this room, not knowing what the future holds. The grant can only be used on money for the Dock Eddies project. The WEDC to date has never requested money to be returned to them, even if the project they funded failed. The reason is that money is put into the infrastructure of the project, in our case the building, to upgrade a building that was built in 1882 to 2017 standards. Although the WDC has never requested money to be returned, Nolita Burr has told us that even if it was returned, they would never look unfavorably upon the city where the project was started. I've already invested substantial time and treasure into this project. I'm also personal guaranteeing the payback of the WDC grant. We've decided to go with the personal guarantee and not the bank loan because of the additional requirements of a separate loan at the bank. Robert, Phil, and I are going to personally guarantee a $1.2 million loan to put this project together. If Dock Eddies goes out of business, all those improvements stay with the building for the next owner. In addition, the increased tax basis stays with the building. I've invested tens of thousands of dollars into this community, and I'm looking forward to this project to restore an historical shell back to its original look. I like to preserve the old look of Waupaca. The $1.2 million investment is at no cost and no risk to the city. Issues remaining: all grant money must be spent on improvements. City gets a tax increase even if Dock Eddies closes. WDC knows this and uses the grant money to incentivize new businesses to come to town. Correction of the dates for start and finish need to be solidified because the bank will not go to loan committee without a signed developer's agreement. I've been coming to this community since 1974. I bought my first cottage here in 1987. I built my first cottage in 1995 and has built another one in 2007. This type of investment and project really motivates me. With this mutual agreement of the committee meeting on 30 May 2017, the citizens of Waupaca will be protected, and the citizens of the state are protected by the language in the WDC contract with the city. A consensus was reached in this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other? Sure. I'm sorry, Mr. Kaler, what's your?
Yes, Chuck Kaler,
Chuck.
Hurling Clark Law Firm, Appleton. I personally called Nalita Burr because I've got some sentimental attachment to the city of Waupaca, I'll tell you about in a minute, to ask her if this business failed and Dr. Box did not move out of state, would this have any negative impact on the city of Waupaca or its future grant applicants, businesses that want to do business here? There was a moment of silence and her answer was no. I said none. She said none. I said thank you. That's all I wanted to know. So Dr. Box is incurring an initial risk, great deal of money. Our firm represents lots of villages and towns in the valley, and they would give anything for all the Dr. Boxes they could get. Now, a little bit about my qualification for saying that I think Main Street downtown Waupaca is one of the Main Street jewels of all the municipalities in the state. I was born here in Waupaca. We still have a 110-year-old family farm in Waupaca County. We pay taxes here. I played baseball against Dave Peterson for the Waupaca Lakemen. I don't remember the score, but I think they won. And he was always a very good sportsman. More than that, there's a park in the north end of Main Street. The namesake is Nels Rasmussen. I'm married to Nels Rasmussen's granddaughter, Susan. I come to Waupaca at least twice a month. I patronize very many of your businesses on a frequent basis. And I think what you have here in Waupaca as a Main Street is something that should be cherished and you can be proud of, but you've got to keep those storefronts filled in order to keep that going. As you drive around the state, you'll see many communities that have difficulty doing that. So with that said, I think this contract negotiation right now need not be started over. I think you're first and goal on the 3-yard line. And whatever you do, I hope you don't give up on it now. Just a couple comments. Brennan has correctly stated the issues, but I just want to make an observation about a couple of them. John Box has lived here a long time. In order for WEDC to require the return of this money, he'd have to pack up and leave here and open a similar business in another state. Why anybody in their right mind would leave this area to go take a second chance elsewhere if, due to some misfortune, his business already failed, I can't imagine. So whether his guarantee is good or not, you first of all have to ask yourself, what are the odds of this doctor packing up and leaving to another state to try this a second time if this one doesn't work? We asked to have and/or in the distillery, brewery, and winery because nobody knows for sure which of these features might be most successful. So if the brewery goes gangbusters but the distillery doesn't, we don't want to be in default if we expand the brew house but shut down the distillery but still keep the business going. So this just gives us some flexibility to keep basically the same business in place without the risk of technical default that could occur the way the current language is written. As far as the letter of credit is concerned, what Dr. Box said is true. There's a sizable cost for a letter of credit. Most business people I know will go to great lengths to avoid that because they have to pay every year for that letter of credit because the bank has to be ready, willing, and able to advance that money basically on a phone call if the circumstances justify it. So once again, I urge you to try to continue this, to finish it, and I think everyone will benefit from it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I am Tom Hoffman with Greenwood Project Management, E8297 Canuck Road, Clintonville. I just wanted to clarify something regarding the question regarding the Phase 1 and Phase 2 portion of the project. The Phase 1 portion of the project is the budget number that was established to build the percentage for the WEDC grant. So In other words, the initial Phase 2 budget is in addition to that, but the WEDC grant was based on Phase 1, a Phase 1 budget, which, as they alluded to, does not include the elevator at this time. We had taken that out and broke that into a second phase because Dr. Box and Robert felt that it was most important to get the main business up and operational before they would look at expanding the dance floor and the banquet hall up on the second floor. And so that is the main reason for the elevator, and the build out of the second floor is part of that Phase 2. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay. So Brennan has given you a summary of the meetings that we've had and what we've done in the last couple of years to get to this point. We've had the ability tonight, of course, to listen to Jan and his attorney and his builder to try and clarify what they believe is what has happened in the past and what will happen in the future. And so I guess we're to the point now where council, we have a request to re-look at the agreement that we agreed to back in February, and we need to have some discussion and decide what to do. So I don't know, anybody? Paul, go ahead.
I'd like to point out that the May 30th meeting, which I attended, and I don't know if everybody else's memory recalls the same thing, but we reached no decision. There was a lot of discussion, but there was not a consensus on which way to go. There just wasn't. A lot of serious discussion about the request and the details of it, but the meeting ended without any consensus and no decision was made at all.
Okay. Council members, anything? Brennan, any other additional comments at this time?
Not at this time. Whatever the council decides, staff will move forward with.
Okay, so I think from what I envision here, I mean, we might have to break this down a little bit just so we can get to a point where we can actually vote on. We have to make some changes to the contract no matter what, because the dates have to be changed.
Correct. At a minimum, there is going to be a grant agreement amendment between the city and WEDC. Again, that's mostly for the scope of work and dates. 'Cause there's also, because construction has not started and all the requirements that I have or the city has for half year and end of the year reports, the reporting deadlines have to change as well.
Okay.
So at a minimum, we're going to have to change those.
Do we have any idea what those dates are?
Jan and Robert would have to provide us the dates of when they feel comfortable with starting construction. I believe when we met on May 30th, there was still a 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 week period for them to go through their lending committee. So once they can provide us a date of when construction they feel they could start, we could hammer out the grant agreement amendment with WEDC real quick.
So, Jan, if we hammer out something tonight, or maybe this is your attorney's answer, but I'm not sure. If we agree to something tonight, now, of course, this would not become effective until next, what's today, Tuesday, next Wednesday would be the effective date of this agreement tonight. So, is 30 days enough? I mean, I don't know all the dates that have to be in there, so maybe I'm the wrong person to be.
The main dates that we need to change are when construction is going to start, and then I need to know roughly, and we've talked about this previously, how long construction is going to end or take to get done. Because whatever the end date is, there's disbursements from the city from WDC to the city, so I just need to know when those disbursement dates are going to be so we can close out the grant agreement if the council decides to move forward with this project.
Okay. So, any ideas on that, Jan?
Our bank lending officer said that once the development agreement is finalized, it will take approximately 4 weeks to go through the loan process.
So if we said September 1?
Well, they also have to find a commercial appraisor. And they're hoping to be able to do that within the 4 weeks as well. September 1
is aggressive, or
would be a little aggressive, I think.
October 1?
October 1 would be more realistic, in my opinion.
We'll do October 2nd only because that's a Monday, so.
Okay, October 2nd, and then
Okay.
what other dates?
Oh, depends on how long construction is going to be.
Tom, 6. Construction can be completed unless we run into any untoward activities within 5 months.
So, April,
I would go April 30th just to cover ourselves on that.
That's reasonable too.
April 30th?
That's.
Brian, I have some questions too.
Yeah, well, can I just get these dates down and then, yeah. Thanks. Paul? Any other dates that need to be changed?
Everything else will be worked out with WDC.
Okay, so those are the 2 dates. Jan, you're comfortable with both those?
Yes.
Okay. Paul Hagan?
What is, for 2 questions, is the letter of credit getting in the way of other financing? And number 2, what is the cost, annual cost of the letter of credit?
The letter of credit does not get in the way of the main loan. It just adds further burdens of application and processing and going through loan committee to obtain it. Based on the amount of this loan, the annual fee is around $1,800 to $2,100.
So fair cost would be about $2,000 annually for the letter of credit to guarantee that portion.
That's my understanding, yes.
So, and basically it's just a request of reducing paperwork to ask us to not require the letter of credit guaranteeing the grant. Is that correct? And the $2,000?
Plus the money, yes. With the personal guarantee, there is no paperwork, and I'm guaranteeing the entire amount of the Wisconsin Economic Development Grant.
Don't get me wrong, you standing here, I have much more faith in your personal guarantee than other folks who have given us that guarantee in the past. I just would feel a bit more comfortable with that original agreement the way we had it as far as the personal, rather than the personal line of guarantee.
If I could also answer that question too. It does partially get in our way as far as financing goes, because with the letter of credit, we have to actually provide that in collateral in some sort of manner. So the amount of collateral that is required on us becomes quite substantial. And part of this application and being eligible for it was showing that you had a financial need for it. And by providing a letter of credit, we actually eliminate the one requirement of the application. So if we didn't get this changed from a letter of credit to a personal guarantee, it would be very difficult for us to actually get the loan. I mean, we had the banks sign letters stating that they would have to reconsider whether or not they would lend to us without this grant. So,
does this letter of credit affect your equity situation as far as the main loan?
Partially.
We'd have to put up collateral for that loan that we would otherwise use as capital for the project.
What capital? You mean as in funds for construction?
Yes.
Okay.
In simplest terms, from what I understand, and they had a prospective banker on the line with them. If they were to take out a letter of credit, they would not get dollar for dollar for that. For example, they would have to put up collateral of $300,000 to get a letter of credit of $225,000.
I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to
Robert,
point out
can
that-
you just mention your name for us?
Oh, Robert Forseth.
Thank you.
Oh, Tom just made a point here too that initially when we were discussing the developers agreement, one of the things that was recommended was that we either do a letter of credit or a personal guarantee, and we decided to go initially with letter of credit. And then you get to the banks and you start figuring out that, well, this is not really going to work out for us. So that's why we're really coming back here. Is this would make it a lot easier for us, and we can get past the bank phases, which is where we're stuck at right now. So.
Okay. So let's go back to the dates real quick. Council, you're okay with the changing of the dates to, if everything else works out, to October 2nd, that would be the start date, and April 30th would be the finish date. Any issues at all with those dates? Okay. I'm just trying to, again, narrow this down a little bit. And then the personal guarantee versus the letter of credit, it's obviously the elephant in this room. So what, somebody said that to me last week, so I thought I'd use it today. We need to have discussion on that and where the council's comfort level is with that and what you think is fair to the developers and also what you think is fair to the citizens of the city, obviously, too. I mean, that's your task, to weigh those things and make sure that you do what's right for the community. So, I guess I open up discussion, and I know Paul started it actually, but I open up discussion on what your thoughts are on how we should handle that. Dave?
I'll speak to the, my opinion would be that the letter of credit is much more solid than a personal guarantee. He's right. Can't guarantee any of us 5 years from now. That, you can't do it. So what happens if that guarantee can't be upheld? I'm a little worried for the city of Waupaca taxpayers. I would prefer the letter of intent as we originally started.
You would prefer, or you would want the letter of credit?
I will vote that way if you want to answer.
Well, yeah, just trying to narrow this down. Okay. Scott?
Could somebody explain to me, is personal guarantee some kind of court binding document, or is this just gentleman's agreement? I'm not privy to that. I don't know who can answer that.
John Hart, can you?
It's a court binding agreement that I would sign and have it notarized. And Attorney Markowitz would prepare the document.
If you had a letter of credit and they defaulted, you would apply for the funds on the letter of credit and it would be paid immediately. If Mr. Box said, I'm not going to pay him, I guarantee, sue me, you'd be at it for a while, getting the money back.
I have a little more integrity than that. Henry can
Well,
vouch
you
to
do
that
now,
too.
but in 5 years we don't know, and we don't know what you have, and we still haven't seen that. But the letter of credit would be upfront. You could get your money very soon.
My net worth has increased steadily over every consecutive year. I still practice.
I think, Jan, he was just trying
I'm just saying,
compare the difference.
I'm not saying that's going to happen or not going to happen. I'm just saying that it isn't necessary that he's going to write you a check as quick as the bank would.
Yeah, I just needed a definition. I didn't want to go much farther than that because I'm a little confused. About
Nobody's questioning your integrity or anything here, Jan, or your net worth. The question was, what's the difference between the two? And that's what.
Okay.
That's how Johnny answered it.
If I could, we actually did already give our personal financial statements to Attorney Markowitz in consideration of this option. So it's not like our finances aren't being reviewed, and that it's just a blanket, hey, rely on our word. There is some oversight in it.
I think it's also important to realize the WDC has never requested the money to be reimbursed if a business goes out, because the intent of the grant has been reached. It's been used to improve the infrastructure of the project. So even if we did go out of business, the WDC history is they've never asked for the money back because the money's been used with the intent.
This is where I'm confused, is I don't understand. I need someone to explain to me, what is the city's potential for loss? I feel really ignorant, but I don't understand the language in the development agreement and some of the other
Okay, so
things
you're
that are
asking
in
what
here.
this-
So what I'm asking is, because Dr. Box is saying that the WEDC is not going to ask for the money back, well, then does that negate our concern about losing money for our taxpayers?
I don't know, Brennan or Kathy, one of you two can answer that.
There is no guarantee in life. I mean, even if WEDC states today that they're not going to ask for the money back, LEDA can be not there in 2 years. There could be a change in the government structure that they come down on all these grants. We almost had to in the 2009 Community Development Block Grant. So there is no guarantee in life here, fortunately. I mean, even though as of today, they won't put it in writing. I've asked, and they won't put that in writing. They may say it on the phone, but they won't put it in writing.
Okay, so am I correct to say that the grant money comes to the city of Waupaca,
Correct.
and then that money is given out to the project in increments?
Correct.
Okay.
The agreed upon original grant from February 22nd had 50% and 100% disbursements of the grant dollars that came to the city.
Okay.
Is
there
the
any
city's,
taxpayer money in that at all?
it is the state taxpayers' money. It's not
Right.
localized, but it's everybody that pays
Okay.
taxes here. It's your state taxpayer money.
So, okay.
Paul Hagan?
One of the things, when I read your business plan, and I hope this is fair to ask, but I read your business plan. One of the things that really struck me was the very high expectation of revenue to cover your expenses in the initial 3 years or so, 3 to 4 years or so. What plans or what contingency plans do you have if your expected revenues are not as anticipated by your business plan?
We would subsidize any negative balance at the end of the month or end of the year as necessary.
Personally?
Yes. Okay. This is a project that I have great passion for, as you can tell.
Of that I have little doubt.
If I could speak on the repayment obligation too, because that's been under discussion recently too, is that in order for them to request payment, we would not only have to stop business here, we would also have to move to another state and start operating out. The likelihood that we're going to move to another state, like Brennan says, there's no guarantee, but I was born and raised in Waupaca. I came back to Waupaca after law school. Jan has established himself in Waupaca. I think it's a pretty safe assumption to say that we're going to be here for a while, even if it does go under. So it's not likely that the state's going to request that money back.
But again, that's now, and we don't know what the state will say in 2 years or 4 years from now.
That's actually in the agreement that the city signed with the state. It says that we have to fold up our business and move out of state. Then they would request that money back.
Robert, that wasn't in the agreement that the city signed. that line of the agreement changed between the time the mayor signed it and between the time WEDC signed it. For some reason, it's a mystery on how that could happen. Attorney Markowitz told us during the May 30th meeting that if he sent a client, he had a client sign a document and went to another attorney for that attorney's client's signature, and it came back changed, he'd be out after blood. That's exactly what happened here. The mayor signed, we approved an agreement in July of 2016. The mayor signed it, and it came back changed. And that was the change on that line. So who knows why that happened, or how it happened, or who did it, but it happened.
Our copies say "and" on it.
When I personally spoke to Nolita, that's one of the questions I asked her. When I personally spoke with Nolita, that's one of the questions I asked her, and you can confirm this tomorrow if you wish. Are both those requirements mandatory before WEDC will request the money? The shutdown of the business in 5 years and opening a similar business in another state? Her answer to me was yes. And that was the second half of our conversation. How that changed, I wasn't involved in it. I have no idea. Or whether it changed or what happened. I can't answer that. Maybe she can. But she told me within the last 30 days that that is the requirement that they are bound by at this point.
At this point. All right.
One thing that I would just like to chat about is, since February, there have been all these changes. Back in February, when we all voted on this and approved it, everything was fine. And then now things just, little by little, something different, little by little, something different. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that.
The major change is going from letter of credit to personal guarantee. The language, I agree with Paul, I have no idea how it was changed, but from the February document until we looked at it later, the money reimbursement clause did change.
But we agreed back in February for that letter of credit.
I think that the council approved we could do either personal guarantee or a letter of credit.
I don't believe that no, we did not. It was.
The developer's agreement that was approved on February 22nd states letter of credit.
Letter of credit, yeah. And that's what I remember that we all agreed on that.
So basically, the question is whether we want to stick with the letter of credit or go with the personal guarantee. Am I right, Mayor?
Mm-hmm.
That's our question now? Okay. I guess we've had an explanation. Then now what about, and my next question is, this third topic about applicant seeks to eliminate requirement to repay. Now you, Dr. Box, you say that's not a requirement anymore, you don't want that?
We have never asked for that.
So that's out the window.
We just asked for the language to be similar to the WDC contract with the city.
So that would be another change then, correct?
No.
To answer the other elephant in the room regarding what language is and what is not. And honestly, it's a gray area. I've gotten conflicting reports from WEDC of what the council saw was and/or. That was what was approved. Now, the agreement that once the mayor signed it came back, the language has changed. And at least the written response I got back from Nolita was they were aligning it with other agreements that they had with the state. Let's put all that aside for a second and look at what the intent was. And I think the intent was to be a good steward of the taxpayer dollars. I mean, regardless of what the WEDC, whether or not they come back and ask for it, I think it's a decision by the council of whether or not you want to repay that back as a good steward if this project were not to succeed one way or the other.
If you ask for that grant money back, don't forget it's already been spent. It's used for improvement of the building. You're asking me to give you $250,000 to finance future businesses then.
And that would cost you $2,100 a year to have that letter?
Yes.
Looking at the huge amounts of money I'm looking at, that's really quite insignificant.
In addition, we'd have to reimburse the $225,000.
Dave, go ahead.
That's the one other thing in the back of my mind. I remember when you had, city had somebody come in and go through their plans for the business, and they really didn't think it was a very solid plan. That's what scares me the most, and because that scares me the most, I want the safest guarantee that we're covered, and that's the letter of intent more than a personal guarantee. That's the way I'm thinking.
Shank and Associates, our accountants, put together a business plan that was in disagreement with the one from Madison in that regard. I don't believe they were given the opportunity to, or they were not here the night to give their side of the business plan that they drafted for us that looked more favorable than the accountants that the city hired from Madison. Okay.
I think we're kind of at a point where we got to start making some decisions here. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to break this down into what I believe are 3 different motions that will amend the agreement in February. The first motion would be to change the dates to the start date from October 2nd to April 30th. October 2nd is the start date, and the end date, or the completion date, would be April 30th. Anybody that'd like to make that motion that we change that?
I would so move.
A motion by Mayo. Second by Dave Peterson, that the February agreement be amended to change the dates from what they were to the start date. The new start date is October 2nd, 2017, and the completion date would be April 30th of 2018. Any discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to add that the scope changed with and/or will have to be dealt with between the city and WEDC on that, if the council's okay with that.
And what's and/or?
The and/or brewery and/or distillery. That is
Yeah,
the
we're
other.
talking about the dates now.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the dates, you ready to vote on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against?
Abstain.
Motion carried. We had, 8 ayes, 1 abstention, 1 absent. Okay, let's address Brennan's and/or. And that was just to deal with, they had brewery / distillery / winery, and they want to put and/or in between each one of those?
Right, and we also need to change the language regarding what's actually going to be constructed, only being the first floor right now. Again, that's more of a clerical between the city and WEDC, but that is one of the requests that was requested by Mr. Yan and Mr. Forsyth.
Any issues there with changing it from and to and/or?
Should we vote on this before we hear back from WEDC?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems like putting the cart before the horse.
We're not going to get an answer until we give them something. So, ask Brennan that. So, yeah, we're going to have to submit something to them.
All right.
So,
All right.
yeah. So, any issues on the and/or versus the?
The original?
Yeah, the original was and.
Okay.
It had to include all 3. They're saying that if one takes off and the other 2 don't, let's not drag the one down that's working. Let's that's their point here. So, any issues there? Let's take a motion on that then. Anybody want to change it? Change the amend the February to say and/or versus and when we're talking about brewery, distillery, winery.
I'll make that in the form of a motion to change the language to as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Hagan, second by Mayo. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against?
Abstain.
I'm going to be against that part.
Okay, so we got
7 ayes.
7 ayes.
1 abstain, 1 no, 1 absent.
Okay. Thanks for the math. Okay, one more. What else did you have, Brennan? Didn't you have one other thing going along with that?
Nope.
The floor, second floor?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that, it's just the general scope of the project will have to change, and again, that's between WEDC and us, but as part of the and/or brewery, distillery, and everything else. So that's taken care of on that one.
Okay. All right. So now we're down to the discussion that we had. Letter of credit, which is what we approved in February, or personal guarantee. And I guess I would entertain a motion to either maintain the letter of credit. I would ask that you make this motion, if you feel comfortable, either to say, I maintain that we keep the letter of credit, or I recommend the personal guarantee in place of the letter of credit. But I think we need to make a motion here.
Option 1's the letter of credit.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Peterson, second by Hackett, that we maintain the agreement that was agreed upon in February, that it be a letter of credit versus the personal guarantee. Any discussion? Any other discussion on this? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against?
Abstain.
Okay, we have 8 ayes, 1 abstention, 1 missing, inaction. Motion carries. Okay, we had one more item. Does the agreement in February say that if the project does not, if it fails within 5 years, that the city will repay that? Does it say that in the February agreement?
Yes, it would be from the last disbursement of grant dollars from the city to Mr. Jan Bach and Mr. Robert Forsyth.
Okay, so we're in the same position here. Do you want to keep it as is in February, where it says if they're not open, if the project does not continue for 5 years, the city will pay back the grant to WEDC? Or do you want to change it to the WEDC language that says, what they say it says is that it's 5 years and they have to move out of the state before we'd have to pay it back?
I'd like to see the WEC language, because that's an entity we're dealing with, and I made it. That's the way I'd like to see it.
So if the WEDC agreement says 5 years,
And he has to move out of state, right?
and he has to move out of state before we have to pay
Now,
it
my
back.
question to a lawyer is, you say we signed something different than what that statement just says now. How can anything even be legal?
Well, that's why we're talking about it tonight, Scott. We're gonna make it legal tonight.
Oh,
Yeah.
but then don't we
I
have to sign
think,
it all over?
I agree. I mean, I don't,
I'm really
this,
confused.
now we're way back,
Yeah.
we're talking way back in July of last year. Okay? And we were under the assumption that it had to stay in business for 5 years when we did the agreement in February. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's where we're at. And then this came, I think actually Jan's group showed us what their agreement said versus what we had as an agreement, and they didn't match.
And the difference is the out of state? Is that the only difference?
The difference is the agreement that we approved last July and the mayor signed said the grant money must be reimbursed if they go out of business or move out of state. The revised line says they must reimburse the money if they go out of business and move out of state. It's a big difference.
Could I get some clarification? Did you sign the agreement when it came back then?
We signed it first after the council approved it and sent it down to the state. The returned one came back with the revised language.
So the state corrected our language.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. I mean, we have minutes, we went back and did research on this, and we have minutes that show that it says and.
No, it says or.
Or, okay. It says or, and you have one that says and.
Right, so somebody changed it. And I'm with Scott. How can that be legal? We're,
Yeah, I'm really confused in the gray area there. Don't we have to all sign all over again? I would think, I don't know.
Isn't that what we're trying to do here, though?
Well, can you just,
Aren't we trying to do that now? I mean, we're trying
okay,
to.
well then, okay, well yeah, then I
No,
guess,
what the-
can we, yeah, I don't know. That's for a lawyer to figure out, I guess.
May I s- we were, when we drafted this developers agreement, we were with the intent of repaying it back. I mean, again, as I said before, put aside the WDC agreement, put aside for a second whether it's and or. It was the intent that we brought forward originally, you know, as part of this entire developers agreement, that I think that whatever decision the council makes should be based upon that, not on the and or.
And the agreement that we signed in February and that they signed in February said and?
Yes. But the one that the council approved when we accepted the grant agreement said or. And that was back in July of last year.
But the agreement in February says, maybe I said that wrong.
Well, again, I mean,
But you have it right in your number 3, right above option, request by Doc Addies. They want to
eliminate that condition altogether. Whether WDC or not requires it, they want it in the developers agreement that we approved on February 22nd. We do have the agreement in there that they repaid back within 5 years. And
So-
again, and the intent in the developers agreement was whether or not WDC required us to do that or not. The intent was we were going to be good stewards of the tax dollars and the grant that was awarded to us to be repaid that back.
Is it written somewhere that the WEC signed, understanding that no matter what happens, or no matter what, we're going to give the money back? I'm kind of confused there.
No,
Do they have to sign, do they understand, or if they don't request, we won't pay it back?
The developers agreement is between the city and Mr. Jan Bach and Mr. Robert Forsyth. WDC does not have any jurisdiction over the developers agreement.
Okay.
I have no input on how or why it happened, but just as an observation, I have the copy that's signed here and came out with Brennan's packet, I believe. It looks like Mayor Smith signed it July 26th, 2016. Mark R. Hogan for WEDC signed it August 1, 5 days later. So to me, it doesn't look like you both signed the same agreement.
they changed the page out.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
What the WED signed, looks like they signed the version with the page change. You signed before the page change. So I'll just throw that back in your lap with you and WEDC to figure out what you guys really agreed to. Because as I stand here, I'm not sure you agreed the same thing. And why? Again, I'll stand back and leave that up to WEDC and the city.
Okay, so we're actually talking about two different things, though, because now let's go back to the February agreement. The February agreement says that the applicant, if they fail within 5 years, the city plans on paying back WEDC. That's what they signed, that's what we signed. Is that right, Brennan? John?
That's what we agreed to back in February, correct?
But it was my understanding only if the WDC requires the money to be refunded.
The developers agreement clearly states that whether or not the WEDC requests it, the city will pay the money back. It's clearly in there. You didn't sign that, okay, because you haven't signed an agreement yet, but that's what the council agreed upon in February.
That's what we're requesting, that the language to us in the developers agreement mirror the state's agreement with you, that the money be repaid if we go out of business within 5 years of operation and we move the business out of state, and the WDC requests the money to be reimbursed. That's the WDC's agreement with the city. We would like the same language in the contract with us.
Again, what Brennan said was it was the intent at the time, the mayor's intent, Brennan's intent, and our intent in February, that we would be good stewards of state taxpayer money and pay it back. And that was what we agreed on in February, and that's what I think we should hold to.
It was not our intent. And you don't have to pay the money back unless the WDC requests it. Remember, the WDC uses this money as seed money to improve a project on Main Street, and that money is spent.
I go back to my original statement then, is I'd like to go with the language WEC. So we would have to vote on changing, I guess, our language. Do we or don't we, our language then? I'd like to see us go to the WEC language. We'll pay it back on the request of the WC, DC, whatever.
EDC.
EDC.
So are you making that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so if I understand Scott, do we have a second? Or do you want me to explain what I think Scott's?
No.
Scott's motion is that he would like to see the developers agreement that we agreed to in February, council agreed to in February, state what WEDC's agreement says, which says before the city would have to pay it back, the business would have to go out of operation within 5 years, and they would have to move out of state, and WDC would have to request it.
Yes.
Okay?
That's my motion.
That's your motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? One more time. Do we have a second? All right, so that motion fails.
Mayor, I'm reviewing that agreement that was approved back in July at the council meeting, where it definitely says if they cease operation or relocate. The agreement that we have before us tonight does not say that. Okay, they changed it, obviously, no question about it. I'm looking at the old agreement and the new agreement. It also says that if there is a default, WDC will send a written notice, which is whatever, and then it says, in the event of default, WDC may terminate the agreement and recover from the recipient 100% of the total of the CDI funds. It just says may, it doesn't say shall. But they are obligated to send written notice of default, but they may recover the proceeds if they ask for it. And they're telling us, well, we never asked for it back. So
Mr. Hart, could you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, I thought I was. In any event, it appears as if they would request those monies back based on the agreement that we approved with the WEDC back in July. The agreement that is now in Mr. Kane's notes is different. That's all I'm saying. So whether we have to go back and approve that agreement because it's changed from when you signed it to ratify it, I would say so. I don't know if we can do that tonight.
But we can agree to the development agreement.
Absolutely. That's
Tonight.
before you.
Okay.
That's on your agenda, and you can change the terms of that if you care to. But I don't think you can change it to and, or, because that has never been approved by council. Only or has been approved by council back in July.
Well, and Scott tried to change it and
And-
his
yeah, he
motion
did.
failed.
Okay.
So, right. Okay. So that would stay in there then? We don't have a motion that would change that, so it would stay as is in our development agreement, right?
Correct.
Okay. Tom, unless you're an attorney, I don't know that you can help me
But I
with
just
this.
want to understand one thing, is that in February, you all agreed to the document that's in your packet right now, correct? It says and?
No, that one, no, that's just the development agreement, and that does not address the same language as the WEDC agreement.
Yeah, these are,
WEDC agreement was approved way back in July.
yeah, we're talking about two different things.
Two different agreements.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. The WEDC agreement was back in July, and that was between the WEDC and the city of Waupaca. And then in February, we did a development agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, between the city and Doc Addie's. And that's what we're talking about tonight.
In the packet,
Right. Yeah.
No,
the packet that you supposedly voted on in February says and.
WDC agreement's not in the packet for this evening, only the original development agreement approved on February 22nd of 2017.
Can you please use the microphone?
Sorry, Mary. No, what's in the packet this evening is only the developers agreement that was previously approved on February 22nd by the Common Council. The WEDC grant was, again, as Mr. Hart stated, it was approved last year. It's not part of the packet this evening.
Brennan, it is in here.
It's only in there in reference to Mr. Kane's notes as to the progression of this business, and he did make reference to that agreement for purposes of historical significance. It is not on the agenda to be acted on or to become part of that development agreement in any respect tonight. It's just a question of whether you're going to change the terms of the development agreement. You have done that in some respects, but right now I don't know if there's any more changes that can be made because what you discussed has all been acted on.
Okay. Okay, so Henry, Brennan, at our next city council meeting then, we should, look at discussing the development agreement that WEDC signed, but we didn't technically sign and see if we will approve that. I guess, right, after the fact? Is that what you're saying, John? We need to,
I'm certain that if you would review that and say that the language changed, but is everybody good with it, then you could ratify it and agree to it. If you say, no, we're not going to, we wanted the original agreement that we signed, you have to go back and talk to WEDC and figure that out.
okay. But we need to do something, is what you're saying.
Not necessarily.
You're not saying that.
The development agreement says exactly what it says. And if they default, you're going to act on your letter of credit because it now stands to have a letter of credit and you're going to get the money back. It's your intention to send it back to WEDC whether they want it or not. So it really doesn't have any bearing on going back to that agreement.
Okay.
You're not going to get in a fight with them. They'll take the money. If they demanded you to return the money, you could say, well, wait a minute. This is what it says. But that's beside the point. That's not what we're discussing.
Okay. All right.
Okay, now you have an agreement which you've changed dates and you've changed a couple other things and you have also ratified the business about the letter of credit. And it's just a question of everybody signing this thing. Once Brandon gets the blessing from the WEDC on the date changes.
Okay. So the only thing that we really changed tonight were the dates. And you're going to,
And the and/or business.
and the and/or for the, and that's something, Brennan, that you're going to put together, and then, right? So our understanding is that the only thing we changed were the 2 dates and the and/or for the brewery, distillery, winery. Everything else is to stay the today. The letter of credit was still there. That has not changed. The only thing that has changed are the dates. And where it said brewery, winery, distillery, it's now going to say and or instead of and. Those are the only 2 things that changed.
And the breaking it up into phases, and that was part of the and/or amendment?
Right.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
We didn't necessarily
Thank you.
have to do that separately, it was all part of this, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. A lot of discussion. I don't know that that's it, I think. I mean, that's the development agreement. Brennan will get that development agreement to me, and I will look it over, and I have until next Wednesday to sign that development agreement, and then Jan and Robert will get that to you and your attorney, and you guys will have to get that signed, and then we can get moving forward here. All right? Anything else on this item? All right, let's move on then. We have the Deer Management Committee update. Alan.
Yes, a very brief update for you. We have been advertising for a volunteer position as coordinator to coordinate the proposed deer hunt. We have not had any responses to that advertisement yet, although I think it closes on July 24th. Is that correct? So we'll wait to see what happens there. We are doing publicity on the program and also on the existing ordinances and laws. I have been interviewed by Josh on WILW, and I will be interviewed on Thursday this week on WDUX. And also the County Post will give us some space on this issue, and we will be putting an insert in the water bill to talk about this project also. We have applied for the nuisance permit with the DNR to take effect from September 1 until March 31st for the hunt to occur. And we've also developed the rules for the hunters, which are pretty much finalized now. At this time, we expect the hunt will occur on city property, the 10-acre parcels that we have. But we will also ask property owners if they would like to have the hunt occur on their property as well. And it is our intent to make this a budget item in 2018. We think we can probably handle the expense of it this year with existing funds, but I think we will be looking for a budget item next year. We will meet again on August 22nd, a Tuesday, and we invite any of you to participate in that. Chuck, Lori, is there anything you'd like to add?
Did a good job.
Okay, that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Any questions for Alan and his?
How large of a property do you have to have for that to occur?
We're talking about 10-acre parcels and larger. Yeah.
I'm a little bit short of that in my city lot.
Now, you know there's an existing law, ordinance, that permits hunting on private property if you have the permission of the neighbors within 100 yards and a permit from the city police department.
So you're good.
Having 5 different neighbors on their property, I think that would not be possible.
Okay, going on to new, thank you, Ellen. Going on to new business, we have a license report number 1371. This is a request for a Class B fermented malt beverage license and a Class C wine license for the Sultan Belly LLC, and Jacqueline M. Rickle will be the agent for this. Henry?
Yes, sir. This is on page 136. This is the new owner of the Cronies, former Cronies. I think they're just doing some renovations now. It's the same type of license that Cronies had. I think they're going to change their hours of operations a little bit, and I'm not quite sure when they plan on opening. But
Oh, they waited this long, Henry. Let them get up and tell us all about it.
Yes.
Oh, business, yeah.
Yes.
Help yourself.
I'm Jackie Rickle, one of the owners. This is Eric Vestergaard. We're planning on opening in mid-August, is when we plan on opening. And it will be new hours. It will be a deli market concept with food to go, get food there. And we will be offering lunch and dinner. We'll also be doing some catering and private dinners as well.
Nice. All right. Anything else, council? Got any questions of them?
What are the new hours going to be?
Right now, we're looking at Tuesday through Friday from 9 in the morning, because we'll be keeping some of the coffee that they had at Cronies until 8 p.m., and then on Saturdays from 9 until 3 p.m.
All right. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
We need a motion to approve this license.
I move to approve license 1371.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Mayo, that we approve of license report number 1371. This is a Class B fermented malt beverage license and a Class C wine license for the Sultan Belly LLC. And Jacqueline M. Rickle will be the agent. I am saying that right, aren't I? Sultan. Sultan.
Danish for hungry.
Sultan. All right. Sultan Belly LLC. All right. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. All right. Again, good luck to you. Thanks. We have application for a temporary Class B and Class B retailers picnic license for the Waupaca Breakfast Rotary Club Oktoberfest event, which is going to be 4 p.m. to 12 p.m. on September 1st, 2017. And this is the reason why I asked Henry to just bring this forward for council, is they are again this year asking for closure on East Fulton Street. They moved it from their prior location to East Fulton Street, and it turned out to be a huge success for them. So I think they want to do it at the same location they did last year. Anything else, Henry?
Well, we do have Dave Benchwell with Rotary here.
Oh,
so
all
to
right.
recognize him.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. This is the Waupaca Rotary's 9th year with Oktoberfest. As Mr. Mayor mentioned, this would be the 2nd year downtown. It was a very good event last year. We had an excellent turnout, the best ever. And obviously we'd like to repeat that performance. Had great weather. That's always a great thing for that event. But be glad to answer any questions. I don't know if you got a copy of the cover letter that I wrote, just kind of summarizing the event. But you know, we plan to basically use the same format as Strawberry Fest. Also use the front of the library as a beer garden area. Have 2 bands, etc. And just it's a really great event, and it raises money for some really great causes.
All right. Any questions, council members? Motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Motion by Paul, seconded by Paul. Mayo, Hagan. Application, this is the approval of the application for the Class B retailers picnic license and the closure of East Fulton Street on September 1st. Let's see, September 1st, and then also, Henry, what's this on August 31st? That's
closure.
Okay. And the roads would be closed too, starting on August 31st, 2017 at 12 p.m. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Good luck to you. Thanks for hanging around. License report number 1375. This is an operator's bartender's license for Sandy Decora Roth, and it looks like this is one that there's a recommendation to not approve this. Is that correct, Chief?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, and you can see in your packet on page 142 through 144, it's actually on page 143 of your packet. There are a number of reasons for this, but you can see that the most recent was an OWI back in July of last year, less than a year ago. And then, and then also, to me, a little bit disturbing too, they failed to appear for an alcohol assessment interview that, and they were written up for that too in January of 2016. And let me ask you this, Henry. She was offered the opportunity to come in front of City Council tonight?
Yeah, she was given a letter and notified of it. Yes.
And she is not here tonight.
I don't believe that we heard from her to say that she could not be here or anything. No.
And then, correct me again, she can apply again in
6 months.
6 months, so she could apply again in 6 months for this, obviously. Okay, so we'd be looking for a motion.
Make a motion, we deny license
Second.
for this lead.
Motion by Whitman, second by Chestnut that we.
No, Fair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Fair. Sorry. That we decline the operator's license for Sandy Decora Roth, and this is license report number 1375. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Annually, the chief does a inspection of licensed establishments, being bars and restaurants that have, I'm assuming, beer and liquor license, and that is in your packet following this, which I don't have a page number, do I? Yeah.
Mayor, it's
Page
145.
146. And I think that's informational, Brian, but is there anything you want to bring up?
No, that's all informational for each of the council. There's no major problems in the city.
Okay, so we'd be looking for a motion just to place this on file.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Hackett, second by Keelan, that we place on file the annual inspection report of the licensed establishments, and this was prepared by Chief Ozell. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Aircraft hangar lot lease between the city of Waupaca and Robert Wubin. Paul Hagan.
On page 147 of your packet is aircraft hangar lot lease between the city of Waupaca and Robert Wubin. This was approved by the airport board because we actually did have a quorum, which was, and I would move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Hagan, second by Chestnut, that we approve of the hangar lot lease with the city of Waupaca and Robert Wubin. Any discussion? If not, Sandy will call the roll.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
And Paul Mayo.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, next we have, thank you, Paul. Next we have the City of Waupaca disaster declaration. Henry, you want to just set this up a little bit?
Yes, sir. Yep. This is on page 155, sort of administrative requirement. As Justin reported, there was a pretty major storm earlier in June. The state has what's called a disaster recovery fund, and this is one of the steps that we have to do to qualify for reimbursement of some of our expenses. As you can guess, we had a lot of extra work as a result of that storm and overtime and other costs related to the cleanup. And what I understand is there's sort of a minimum threshold, and we met that, of like $25,000. What the state fund, you have to apply. State fund will reimburse us 70% of our total cost. Now what happens is the county emergency management offices aggregates these applications for municipalities and sends it in as one packet. And if they say that an expense in one community is not a valid expense or it's not backed up, that doesn't affect necessarily ours. There are 4 towns then within Waupaca County that are going to be seeking some reimbursement. It's Dayton, Farmington, Lynn, and Waupaca. The 2 cities is Waupaca and the city of Waupaca. There was really just Waupaca County that experienced the damage. There was a little damage in Waushara County and a little bit in Outagamie County in the cities. Again, this fund exists. We don't know what level it's funded at, and will we get any or all of the money we request? We don't know. But this disaster recovery or disaster declaration sort of required as part of our reimbursement packet. And I believe we're trying to get all our stuff into the county by the end of the week, is what Eric told me he was hoping to get it by. So I'll talk to you guys on the side about that.
Okay, thanks, Henry. So basically, this is one of the requirements is to have a declaration that City Council approves, and that in backing it up with the cost that had occurred during that disaster time. So we need to approve this this declaration.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Whitman, second by Keelan, that we approve of this disaster declaration. Sorry, disaster declaration. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Let's talk trucks, Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Memo on page 156 of the packet. We've talked about this replacement of our 1996 GMC Sierra 2500 for quite some time. If you remember, we did look into used vehicles, realized inventory was not where we thought it may be, so we decided to go to a sealed bid process and go new. We're happy we went that way. Really only a couple $1,000s more in going new, and the one we were looking at before used was about 60,000 miles on it, had about 60,000 miles on it. Anyway, in your packet, in the memo, you will see that we had originally budgeted $42,000. This base bid came in at $25,272, or the one we are recommending did. And that is because we were not going with plow and we're not going with four-wheel drive, as we decided this would not be used for snow plow, snow removal tasks. That decision was made between our department and the Department of Public Works, which we were able to save substantial money that way. We got 4 sealed bids in, and you can see them there on the memo. One, Scafidi Motors out of Stevens Point, Clintonville Motors, Peterson Chrysler, and Neville Motors. The lowest bid was $25,272, as I mentioned. And that is for a 2017 Ford F-250 Super Duty, which is our fleets are very familiar with, as basically that is what makes up most of our vehicles. So that is my recommendation, to accept that bid from Scafidi Motors for a price not to exceed $25,272 for a pickup truck for the Park and Rec Department.
I move to approve.
Motion by Keelan, second by Dave Peterson, that we approve of the purchase of a 2017 Ford 250 SD pickup truck from Scafaldi Motors out of Stevens Point in an amount not to exceed $25,272. Any discussion? I know I'm going to get asked this tomorrow, so tell me. We are truly comparing apples to apples, and the $2,000, $2,800 difference that the Waupaca dealer quoted versus what Scafaldi quoted is truly an actual difference, and
Yes,
we just went with the lowest bid?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Paul Hagan, Dave Peterson,
Aye.
and Scott Perchatsky.
Abstain.
8 ayes, 1 abstain, and 1 absent. Motion carried.
More.
Yes. All right, moving on. So the pickup truck was planned. This mower was planned for 2019. It was on our capital replacement list for that year. Unfortunately, an engine burned up, and we're looking at having to either put a new engine in it, which would be about $3,500, or replace it. It's an 11-year-old mower, so it is our recommendation to replace it. It is, as you can see, the 3 quoted prices there, the lowest being $7,214.27. That's from Riester and Schnell in Stevens Point, and these were all, we reached out to John Deere dealers in the area. We have to go with the John Deere in this model because this is different from the rest of our parks where we have X-Mark 0 turns out of Wires and Kaukauna. We need this model because this is what fits in between our gravestones in the cemetery. It provides more stability on the hillsides, so that is why we go with this variation from our parks. Challenges it poses having one is that first of all, when the grass is growing and it's growing a lot, we fall behind, and we certainly hear about it if the public thinks that the cemetery is not being kept to high standards. Number 2, if that one goes down, the one that's currently working, we're going to have to either pay to have it contracted out or incur other costs to get the job done. So I would request that we move this up to this year, and that request is to go with Riester and Schnell for $7,214.27.
Get a motion?
I would so move.
Motion by Mayo, second by Hackett, that we approve of the purchase by the Parks and Rec of the 2017 John Deere Select Series X584 with a 48-inch deck blower bagger system from Riester and Shell, Incorporated, at a price not to exceed $7,214.27. Any discussion? This is coming from where?
Stevens Point.
No, the money.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I should have explained it.
It would be part of the state trust fund loan, and because it's, has a 10-year life, it'll probably be part of the 5-year note.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Sandy will call the roll.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Paul Hagan, Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
and Steve Hackett.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
Thanks. Thank you, Aaron. Ordinance number 0217, this is the first reading of an ordinance under Chapter 9 for public peace and Good order. John Hart?
There's, this is an ordinance to amend Chapter 9. It has to do with possession of firearms, bows, and crossbows. Section 902 sub 3 now is comprised of a Section A and a Section B. Section A says that no person shall possess a firearm in a city park unless it is unloaded and encased. State law doesn't allow us to do that. We cannot enforce that ordinance, so that has come out, and the Part B is what you see in front of you, is just 9.02 sub 3. That has to do with concealed carry weapons in cities in the building, and that stays the same. The second section of that has to do with smoking, and this just adds an additional prohibition against smoking. Number 4, within 50 feet of the east and west main entrances to City Hall of the City of Waupaca, to include any protrusions, verandas, etc. That has to do with the people that are hanging around the entryways smoking cigarettes. They have to be at least 50 feet away, and that's just an amendment to that section of Section 9.
Okay. Any, go ahead.
I would move to approve.
This is the first reading.
Oh, first reading, yeah,
That's
okay.
okay. That's right. This is the first reading, so we will bring this back at our next regular scheduled meeting. There's no urgency on this, is there, John? So we can let the public comment on this and bring it back for a vote at the next meeting. Okay, any more discussion on that ordinance? Okay, let's go to lease agreement for Mount Tom tower space, and this is for the Waupaca Area Community Radio, which is 99.1 FM. And I think, Henry, you're doing this one? Okay.
Yeah, we have Mark Gerlach in the audience, who's the station manager for our sister low-power FM station, and maybe you want to explain why you want to be up on our tower.
Okay, well, we've been on the air for about 2 years now, and one of the first things that I, questioned was how am I going to keep this thing on the air for the foreseeable future. But the other concern was, how do I make the station better? And of course, I've had Mount Tom on my mind all that time. I knew at some point we'd need to upgrade our signal to serve the area better. So we've always kind of had our eye on Mount Tom. By co-locating on the Mount Tom Tower, we can enhance the health and safety of our service area via the EAS for weather and amber alerts, emergency alerts. We can enhance our connection to the community, expand our audience. We want to enhance and promote the arts community, and of course the chamber. We provide weather, we provide public service announcements, and we are hoping that you would consider putting us up on your tower, and we would also hope you would consider lowering the fee a little bit. I thought maybe $50 a month would seem like a better figure for us, considering the service that we're going to be providing for the community. So that's just kind of why I'm here, just trying to make the first steps.
Okay.
Mayor, it's probably worth noting very quickly that this lease is based on the tower lease we had with the Christian radio station when we used to own our communications tower. And I think it accomplishes what we need in terms of any kind of interference with things that we're doing up in that area. And I know Josh and Mark know each other well, and I don't have any problem, if there are issues that they'll work through those. I think just for basis, the radio station, Christian radio station, was paying us $250 a month. But remember, they sell advertising, they have income. This is a public radio station with a pretty limited budget. And I think that's why Mark, I told him he should be prepared to pay something. So, I didn't feel comfortable, sticking a number in there. I said, you make the case for your number. But just so you have sort of an idea of the different entities and what they paid in rent.
Josh, where is where's the antenna for Waupaca, the city's, 96.3?
It's on the Mount Tom water tower.
It's there also?
Yep.
Okay, and that won't interfere with this 96.1?
I talked to a broadcast engineer about that, and his opinion was because these are so low powered, he felt there probably would not be any interference. If you put two full power radio stations next to each other, there would be issues, and that's why there's language in the agreement if there were to be interference. But he felt reasonably good that there shouldn't be. He didn't rule it out, but he felt pretty good about it.
Okay, and
if there was, we certainly would, take steps to mitigate that.
Sure. How much does the city pay for their lease there? I know the answer, but I was just wondering. Okay. All right.
Is it zero?
It is zero.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd consider that too, so.
What do you think, council? What? I'm sorry.
Question. Where does your money come from to run the station?
Me?
Just from
For
you?
now.
Okay.
We're working on grants. Robert Forseth is going to be writing some grants for us, so we're pretty confident that we can get our finances up.
What is your ultimate goal here? I mean, you can't continue to fund this yourself forever, right? And,
Sure.
And, I mean, what are your plans?
Well, getting the station located in town ultimately, the studio's included, not just the transmitter. But, this was something that I think we really need to do. First off is to better our signal because our signal is just not the best right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, ultimately I want this to be a part of the community, and I want the community to be a part of the station to get people involved in programming, people involved in running the station.
So, Henry, help me here. This agreement is for how many
I
years?
believe it's 5 years.
5 years?
And it's renewable. Mark and the station would have the option to renew the lease for the same or shorter lease period under the same terms, provided they give written notice 90 days beforehand, before the initial term expires.
So what if he gains a lot of income in 5 years and is paying us such a small amount?
Well, we're not going to really be doing any advertising.
You're not going to do advertising? But you're going to do like fundraising or grants?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, some fundraising.
Yeah, it stays, yeah, that's what I.
Well, it doesn't have to be 5 years either. I mean, if you feel that $50 is fair, but you would like to reevaluate it before the 5 years, we could change the terms of that, if you wanted to. I mean, it's up to us here, so.
I'll throw something out there.
Okay.
And I won't be offended if you don't agree. I would make a motion to approve the lease for the first 2 years at $50 per month, and then year 3, 4, and 5 at $75 per month.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion by Hagan, second by Keelan, that we approve of this lease agreement with 99.1 FM. For the first 2 years, the lease agreement would be $50 a month, and for years 3, 4, and 5, it would be $75 a month. Any discussion?
There is a minor correction that has to be made in attachment A. It talks about maximum power consumption of 10 amps, and amperage is a current, it's not power. So I'd like to see that corrected.
What do you put there?
What is it supposed to say, Mr.
It should be
Electrician?
watts or kilowatts or whatever.
Watts, yeah.
By a guy who used to work for the power company.
Well, we operate at 76 watts, I know that.
Oh, yours would change once you.
Oh, that's right, that's right. That would all be
Okay, I'll
kind
get
of
with
up to the
Josh.
FCC then.
Correct.
If you're okay with, Paul, with them working that out, and
Yeah.
Alan, you're okay with
Thank
that
you.
too? Okay, all right. Any other discussion?
I'm
Yes.
$25 difference. It seems such a small difference. I'm wondering why we're doing that. Why don't we just make it 75 for all 5 years, or 50 for all 5 years, or change the term and just have it be a 2-year agreement or a 3-year agreement?
Mayor, you can terminate this on 90 days notice anytime you want to. So if you think they're getting away with murder, you just terminate and then you talk about it again and redo the deal.
Right,
It's a
but for
5-year term, but
$25,
It's a
it
5-year
probably
term,
won't
but
be
you
worth
can,
it.
you can terminate it in 90 days notice anytime you want to. in 5 years.
Either side.
Either side.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
I agree with Mary. I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see it consistent at $50 for 5 years.
Right.
This is a public service station. This isn't a
Exactly.
commercial radio station.
Okay.
And this guy is, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but.
Mark.
Sorry, okay. He's been funding this out of his pocket as a service to the city, and I think $50 is fair for 5 years.
Okay. Don't forget, we do have a motion and a second on the floor, but you're giving your opinion.
I'm hoping we can amend the motion.
I would accept the friendly amendment.
Wow. Alan?
I would too.
Okay.
I was torn myself, so.
All right, so the motion has been changed to $50. Does that fit on our little list that we, no. $50 a month for the 5 years. Understanding that within the agreement, either side could get out of this agreement with a 90-day notice.
When you start making money hand over fist,
We'll take it. I'm not sure that'll ever happen.
All right, any other discussion? Roll call.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Paul Hagan, Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Steve Hackett, Scott Prochatsky,
Aye.
and Dave Peterson.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
Thanks.
All right. Yep, thank you, Mark. Thanks for hanging around tonight. Appreciate it. That was worth $25 a month. Okay, we have a new appointment to the City Planning Commission. Council President Paul Mayo.
Thanks, Mayor. The mayor appoints Tracy Arendt to the City Plan Commission. And I would need a motion to approve this appointment.
Also move.
Second.
Moved by Keelan, second by Chestnut, to approve the mayor's appointment of Tracy Barron to the City Plan Commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Back to you, Mayor.
All right, well, thank you, Paul. I think we're back at full force now, too, yeah, so that's great. Okay, next, we have a special use permit, final approval for Mary Robin Hess, and this is for the Foundations for Living. Remember, this is that overnight warming house, so. Brennan?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item's on page 179. This is the third year of the warming shelter for Foundations for Living, and with the recent changeover of the executive director, there's been some modified amendments to what was approved from last year. If everyone remembers, the Foundations for Living did approach the City Plan Commission and Common Council last year to be granted a permanent special use permit, but it was a recommendation by the Plan Commission to the council to maintain a yearly review or an approval of their special use permit. Mary Robbins Hess is the new executive director and did come forward to the Plan Commission seeking a couple modifications. One of them is they're opening later this year, November 1st through April 30th. And then they are changing the times again. Originally, last year they were at 6:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. They're now at 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. They did come to the Plan Commission seeking a permanent approval, and again, the Plan Commission recommended up to the Common Council to maintain this as a yearly review and approval. However, similar to what we've done with the scrap dealer licenses, unless there's significant changes, this would just come to the come to the Common Council in the future for a yearly approval of the special use permit. Overall, we have had, as my memo states, we've had a couple of conversations. I do thank the chief for sitting down with the executive director and myself to talk about how it's going. In your packet, you do see the last 2 years of individuals that have stayed there, how many they are getting, where they're from, how many nights they're actually staying in the warming shelter, and just we did have a conversation at the planning commission, but also as we were reviewing this about working with some of the other local churches that support this warming shelter to try to avoid some of the, I will say, utilization of city services throughout the day, because once the warming shelter closes at 7 a.m., they're basically out on the street for the day, and sometimes are just wandering the streets or at the rec center or city hall here. So we are working with the foundation's board to, hopefully encourage them to, their mission is to, get these individuals back up on their feet, get their life skills back, so that they could hopefully be employable. So working with some of the local businesses and churches around here, whether it's, small maintenance jobs or something along those regards, and they're very open to that and are working towards those goals. But I'm encouraged with the new executive director and her willingness to work with the city on this. So.
Good. Awesome. So we'd be looking for a motion to approve this one-year agreement with the Foundations for Living.
So moved.
A motion by Fair, second by Hackett, that we approve the special use permit for Mary Robin Hess for Foundations for Living, which is located at 1421 Churchill Street. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
And Paul Mayo.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, Brennan, thank you for that. We have the scrap dealer's license. This is license report number 1370. Is this still pending inspection?
This one is an out-of-state individual, so they're not in state or in city limits. So this one is just the $100 fee.
Okay, so there's no inspection to be done? Okay. All right, so it's not pending an inspection. So we'd be looking for approval of license report number 1370.
Move to approve license number 1370.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Keelan, that we approve license report number 1370. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next, license report number 1372. This is a Class B intoxicated liquor license and Class B fermented malt beverage license for Banjo Bar LLC. This is actually just a change of the agent for the licenses. So the same LLC owns it, but they're changing the individual that will be the agent on there. Again, we would be looking for approval of that.
Second.
Motion by Peterson, second by Whitman, that we approve of license report number 1372. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. License report number 1373. This is a taxi driver's renewal for Jessica Tho. For January 1st? Oh, she must have just started. Okay. So she needs, we need approval of this report so that she can be driving in town here.
Move to approve.
Motion by Hagan.
Second.
Second by Keelan, that we approve of license report number 1373. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. License report number 1374. These are operator's license, or better known as bartender's license. You can see a list of those. Obviously, they are, again, pending background checks, and if they owe the city any money, they have to pay that before they're going to get their license. But clerk's office is asking for your approval tonight, pending those.
Move to approve license report number 1374.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Chestnut, that we approve license report number 1374. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Okay, let's see. Nothing under number 10. Communications, recommendations of the mayor. Just remember that Kathy told you, and Henry, I think, told you, or one of the two told you about August 1st. We are planning a committee of the whole meeting after the regular council meeting. They've been asked to keep the council meeting a little light so that we can get to the committee of the whole meeting. You're not going to be asked to make any decisions at that time, but that will be worked into the budget as we move forward for the 2018 budget. But we felt it was important that you had the opportunity to get an update, and I think Kathy has some recommendations on some of the tips on what we should be doing with those. So I think it will be very good. Anybody else have anything for the good of the meeting tonight?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Keelan, second by Hagan, that we adjourn till our next regular scheduled meeting, which is August 1st, 2017, subject to call. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. We are now adjourned at 8:45 p.m. Thanks, everybody, for attending and watching for the 2018 budget. But we felt it was important that you had the opportunity to get an update, and I think Kathy has some recommendations on some of the tips on what we should be doing with those. So I think it will be very good.